Right, it's Monday, the 9th of July. Welcome to Excellence. This is the Teach Computing webinar. It's free to register, free to attend, free to catch up, and free to watch the content afterwards. So we have a program for this evening. It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to do the welcome in a moment. Then we're going to look at 3 topics on the agenda tonight. So one of them is Python tutorials, the best use of Scratch, and resources for GCSE computer science. A lot of tonight is me mentioning things that I've thought, I've heard, discovered, encountered with links to resources. And some of it's just really starting the conversation. What I want to do now is just for a moment is to mention some of this kind of joining information, this welcome. So the first part here, hello, I am Alan O'Donoghue. I have taught computing in schools in the north of England. It's only since about 2007, 2011 when I first started teaching computing. I actually started life as started my teaching career as a DT teacher. I taught in Southport, Blackburn, and Preston back in the school where I used to teach. I don't teach there anymore. I now work as EXA Foundation. So I might have met you somewhere on the road. And EXA Foundation, what I try to do as much as possible is to support schools for free when I can with the development of computing in schools. I spend a lot of time with grammar schools and the teaching of GCSE computer science. Now, somewhere on your screen, I'm hoping you can see a little video of me. You can see I've not got a lot of hair. Usually have a flowery shirt, Irish accent, and it's because it's just really there as a sort of a nice thing. You don't have to watch the video all the way through. You can probably see you might have an icon in the top left-hand corner, that one. Okay, and what you could do is you could probably drag that video somewhere else if you don't need it. There is I should be sharing my screen, so I'm highlighting words here. So So there's one of those blips that happens from time to time. It's just, I've no idea, just from every so often, it throws me out. There's a problem and it just says you have to reload and then I disappear. So apologies. We are still recording. Hope. Yeah, so we're still recording. So fingers crossed this will work. So I need to go back and share my screen again. Sorry. Um, So there's an app. I click on a button. It's going really slow now. I click on a button that normally allows me to share my desktop. Come on, where is it? Oh my gosh. So I'll see if while I'm clicking on things, when I do share the screen. Oh come on, what are you doing? Let's see. Normally just click on a button and something pops up. Oh, it says it's connecting. Right, here we go. Screen area. And now I'm just going to go and draw the area of the screen that I want to share. And then it should appear on yours in a moment. And that little technical hitch. Now, I find usually when I do a webinar, there's one of those normally. So hopefully there won't be any more and we've got it out of the way at the beginning. So as I was saying, this screen sharing part, you should be able to just about make out some of the words. It depends on what size screen you're watching, but when you watch the video or look at the document, you have to see it more clearly. Now, I've talked about the video window, and I've also talked about the screen sharing. There's a chat window, and could you please, you'll need a keyboard to do this, in the chat, could you just say, like, hello, tell us a little bit about what part of the country or the world, whatever that you're in, maybe your teaching role, like you might be head of computing, you might be new to computing, you might not have started teaching it yet. And if there's a particular thing that you think is going to be of most value tonight. So from the agenda, we have three things. We have Python tutorials, the best use of Scratch, and resources for GCSE. So you can say all of them, the first two, or actually just here for the resources for computer science. Oh, so I'm just from Yorkshire. Well, that's where I am today. I'm in Bradford. I don't live in Yorkshire. I live in Preston, but I have an office here in Bradford, which is where I am. Of course, Yorkshire is huge, the biggest county, I think, in the whole of England. Waiting to find out what Claire, Rob, and Neil and Anthony are going to say. So Northampton, Kettering. I'm going to be in Northampton on Thursday. I've been invited to a school there to do some physical computing things for the day. Oh, Rob, you're also in Northampton. I'm going to be arriving sometime during a football match on Wednesday, I think. And who else? Oh, South Cumbria Lake District. That's not a million miles away from me. I live in Preston, which is just down the M6. Right. So we know that the chat is working. Now, the chat window, please use this in a few different ways. I will constantly read it as I'm talking. And so sometimes the version of putting your hand up, you could say, is that true? Where do I do the other? And I will maybe take account of what you've written. But you could also use the back as a back channel, talk to each other. So if Rob wants to say to Claire, oh, Claire, you're in Northampton, so am I, then you could send each other messages. They won't be private, and bear in mind that this is recorded. But once the messages, like I think the first 3, 4, 5 messages appear in the video, and then they drop off. But you can go back and scroll through the messages if you want. So please use the chat. If you've got suggestions, questions, links. The recording, so the recording is in progress. Afterwards, at the top of the document, I'm just going to scroll up, where it says link to follow. I'll put the recording on YouTube, and if you come back to this document, you can just click on that link, and then you can watch the video. So that's in there. The notes. So of everything, I think the notes is going to come back to. So there's links to things that you can find, links to the recording, links to get into this room and all of that. And then finally, feedback. I really take a lot of interest in the feedback that people give me, especially if they write written comments. I find that really helpful. So if some bits of the webinar didn't work right for you, or if you've got some ideas about how to make it better, then please tell me, because I think this is about the 4th one I've done this year for secondary, and I think that by the time I've got to 6, 7, 8, that they'll be a lot better. So apologies if you're having to put up with the not quite as good as they could be, but you can contribute and it'll help improve them. Right, that's all of the housekeeping stuff out of the way, and I'm now going to go to the first topic on our program, which is Python tutorials. Very smooth, because that's 6:10 we had, and this webinar finishes at 7 o'clock. Now, all of the questions and the topics so far for these webinars have come from a few places. So I spend a lot of time in CAS forums, Twitter chats, and on Twitter I go to Facebook groups just to do my work, and I listen a lot to the kind of questions that come up. And some of the kind of questions that I've read from teachers are, oh, I need to find some Python tutorials so I can get my students on them. I read one earlier today where a teacher was asking if somebody could recommend a site with Python tutorials so that students can follow the tutorials, and then the teacher can go in and kind of, in a nice way, spy on their students to see what their students are up to. Now, here's an opinion coming out, and we know that everybody's got their own opinions. I'm not convinced that that is the best way of going about it. Now, in case you disagree with me, I'm going to point you to some tutorials in just a moment that other people have recommended and some that I would recommend myself. But I would say if you've got an idea that you can just point your students to some Python tutorials and use them for homework, and then that's enough, then you're probably not, maybe you haven't actually tried it yet, and if you try it, then you might see where I'm coming from. So a little bit of background, so you know where my opinion's coming from. So in 2011, I was an ICT teacher. I was head of ICT at a school, a large secondary school, and I offered to start teaching the GCSE, and I knew I was going to have to learn how to program. So I decided I was going to try Code Academy and books and all these sorts of things. But I actually found in the end it was much better for me to set challenges for the students to try and solve while they were in front of me in the class. And then I could work around them, not exactly like a facilitator, because sometimes people use that and they mean like the facilitator doesn't have a lot of involvement. I was teaching my students how to program, design algorithms, and all of that. And I found that took a while for me to get my head around it, not just the like, what's it mean to program in Python? Can you use this function? Which version of Python should we use? I don't just mean the technical know-how, but I had to figure out the pedagogic, the teaching and learning bits, how I'm going to teach Python. And it took me a while, but I was glad that I stuck with it. In the first case, I thought, if I just give them some books and some tutorials, and you know what they did? They didn't seem to learn a lot. But maybe I was doing it wrong. And maybe if you are deciding you're going to follow tutorials, you'll do it in a much better way than me. And you'll think, Alan, I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking out of your cake hole or something like that. So my experience has been, and it took me a few years to figure this out, was I found it's actually better to teach the bulk of the theory outside of the lesson as homeworks. And I would say about 70 to 80%, I mean, largely our lessons became programming lessons. Now, when I use the word programming, I'm talking about three different aspects of strands. So clearly there's the computational thinking, there's the algorithm part, and then there's the problem solving programming. So I think if we're not careful, so the last couple of weeks I've been doing some courses in hotels, Manchester and London and that, and some teachers who haven't been teaching computing very long, even in their language, I can hear them talk about like, oh yeah, well we're teaching Python, and when the children come and they're learning Python, and I think there's a bit of a danger that we're putting too much emphasis on this one programming language. So Python is a tool in as much as a teacher has a number of tools. You have a whiteboard, projector, pens, thing for whiteboard, your pen, your red pen, your green pen. Python is just one tool like that. And when if you're learning how to become a teacher, you're not learning how to use a whiteboard. You develop that as you go along. And if somebody decides to say, well, actually, we use blackboards here, or we use whiteboards, or we use, you've got enough teacher skills to be able to adapt to use it. So if you're saying, well, I'd like some structure and some strategies, well, I'm going to go on to those in just a moment. Now, I'm looking back at the chat, and one thing I did ask in the chat, if you wouldn't mind telling me, this is, you don't have to, what you think is going to be the most important thing for you from this webinar. So either Python tutorials, the bit on Scratch, or the bit on the computer science resources. So that's my little test, just to make sure that you're still paying attention and you haven't gone to sleep, because it's been a long day today. Now, back to the Python thing. So eventually, after I'd been teaching computing and computer science GCSE for about four or 5 years, I started to get into a habit where I would set multiple challenges for everybody in my class, and we did it in pairs. And you might have seen I've written articles about pair programming you can get in the Hello World magazine, where they would have to solve multitudes of problems themselves in pairs. And all the time I would be in the room and I would be watching and intervening, and I'd go around and visit pairs, and I'd be saying things like, oh, can I come and talk to you too about, I really like the way you structure your code, and you put some comments in, there's some really good habits in there. Yeah, it's a good question. I've noticed that one thing you've got written 10 lines here, which are almost repeating the same thing. Would there be a more efficient way we could do that? So, whereas I feel if you're following a Python tutorial, tutorials are almost always written in a linear fashion, as in start at number one, right? Number one, we're going to learn how to do hello world. Right, now you've done that, you move on to number two. And tutorials don't really have that smart sort of interactivity to really figure out to say, well, yes, you can do hello world that way. And actually, you know what? That's probably a better way of doing hello world than the way we described in the tutorial. And I think that is where the skills of a teacher really come into their own. Now, I'm just going to try and show you something for a moment. Now, I'm experimenting with something that I haven't tried before. So this is a link to a YouTube video. I don't think the video is going to play very well in the webinar, but I think it has a thing I can do, and I should have tried this beforehand, but it's all been a bit, right. No, okay, right. So what I'll do is I'll let you watch the video later on yourself, but these are some events I've been planning recently, and if I can just skip past the first bit of the video, it's just so this video is about a minute long. So even if you do decide to watch it later on, it shouldn't be too onerous because it's a 1 minute video. So I'm just going to pause the video around about there. So it might be hard to tell what's going on. So we have a teacher here called Joe, and we have another teacher called Mike, and each of those is one of 10 teachers that turned up for the evening. They turned up about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock for a 2-hour programming evening. And what I've done is I've set them about 10 programming challenges, and I asked everyone to start on challenge number 1 and then see how you get on. Now, I've tried to pair Joe and Mike together and the other teachers that you all see around the room at a level where I feel that they're fairly evenly matched in terms of confidence, experience, expertise, in terms of problem solving, algorithms, and Python. Now, throughout the course of the evening, the two of them work in pairs. Driver, navigator. Every 5 minutes, they hear a noise from me, like something like that, and then I get their attention. Do you know what? As the evening went on, it became more difficult to get their attention because they're like, no, they didn't want to stop what they were doing. They want to, so they were very much in the zone. And I would say maybe 20 minutes into the first hour, I started to feel a little bit redundant. Like, well, why do they need me as a teacher? Because they were working there together. I point them to lots of resources that they could use. But it did feel like a good position to be in as a teacher so that my class were not absolutely dependent on me. And I could go over, as I'm doing in this next bit here. And he's got his hands on his face because I was saying, oh, had you thought you could do it this way? And if you did it, and they're like, oh, we hadn't thought of that. So I was going around to the pairs, having a look at what they'd done. And some were like, there's a couple over here towards the end. This pair here, they've actually got a development background. They used to be like up to about a year or two ago. They were working for a business, developing software. So they were using Java, I think, to build their solution. Anyway, I kind of need to go back to the agenda a little bit. But they had some challenges that they were working through, and I've just clicked on the second link in that section just so I can show you what the challenges look like, and you can see what I mean. So there's the program for the evening. I'm going to be running another one of these in a couple of weeks' time in London, and I will run them in other cities. So, if somebody's near a city like Northampton and you think that 2 or 4 people might come along, well, 4 would be good, 6 would be even better. But, right, so number 1, it's simulating flipping a coin. Choose heads or tails. You chose heads. Oh, you chose heads. The coin says heads. So they have to write some, solve some challenges like that. And as it goes along, and I'd say these are all starting just below GCSE level and then get up to the very top of GCSE and into that A level kind of boundary. So there's a sequence of challenges. You can have a look at those. There's links in the document. Doesn't matter if you're not paying attention to me now and you start to read them. Now, however, I do accept that some people will be going, no, Alan, I don't like your approach. I've decided I want to give my students some tutorials and I want to follow those through themselves. And then I want to, quiz them, find out how they've been up to. There's a link to a blog post I wrote a little while ago that I called 10 teaching resources, 10 Python teaching resources you really should be using. You might find that a little bit easier to read than a page full of links, but there's quite a few things in there that I would suggest if you're looking for tutorials, and a few other eggs as well. So I don't know if you know that Python has got some eggs hidden into it. So I'm going to close that down. Now, lots of people, when they're asked to recommend their favorite Python book or the first book that they learned Python from, they tend to recommend the first one, and that's what I'm going to do. So the gentleman over on the other side of the Atlantic called Al Zweigert, And lots of things that I think Al has done that are great. He wrote a book called Invent Your Own Computer Games with Python. And I've put a link to this in the document. Now, if you want, you can go to Amazon and places like that, and you can download his book, or you can pay for an electronic version, or you can just download it for free. And I don't mean you have to break any laws or anything, but Al has shared the content of all of his books for free. I would say that this one here is a good one to start with. I think there's about 11 chapters in the book altogether. And if you've never been teaching GCSE before, you might not know the sort of level that's required. So I'd say this covers a good deal of the first sort of 2/3 in terms of the requirement for GCSE. There are some other books as well that he's written about Python, but I would say in terms of GCSE, that one's going to help you quite a lot there to start with. And there's all these like coded solutions to things. And if you want to get the free one, you just basically go to where it says you either buy the bundle, or read online for free, and it will take you to a place where you can then just read the chapters. So chapter 3, the guess the number game. If you've ever been on any courses that I do, you might have noticed this is a particular one I use. Yeah, make sure you're using the right version of Python. And you can download the code, and I use it sometimes for sabotage in some of those lessons that I've done. Now, there are some other things I'm going to mention now. EduBlocks. Now, it would be great if you had heard of EduBlocks. So you might know that in Preston, where I live, we've been running now for a few years, Preston Raspberry Jam. And not long after we started, in 2012, a young boy called Josh came along, and he was 8 years old, and he told us he wanted to learn how to program, and well, Josh has moved on now. He's now 14, and he has written and created his own programming language called EduBlocks, and I cannot recommend this highly enough. So you're thinking, hang on, we've already got Python. Why do we need EduBlocks? Well, EduBlocks sits as a very, very nice segue between Python and Scratch. So we know that Scratch is a block-based programming language, and because it's block-based and all the blocks fit together in various permutations, you can't get it wrong. You can't get the syntax wrong. Well, Josh has taken Python and turned it into blocks, and this is EduBlocks. Not only has he done that, but he's created little tutorials. He's got, if I just move this down, this is a 14-year-old lad who may do in GCSE, maybe starting GCSE computing this year when he goes into year 10. And he's written all these resources, all these coding cards. It is absolutely fantastic. He's been nominated for awards. I don't think he's actually won an award yet, because nearly all the competitions, it's girls who've been in the final as well, and people want to encourage more girls to do it. But it is absolutely fantastic. Give it a go. It works really well with microbit as well. And of course, you probably know that there's another editor you can get for the microbit called Mu, which is like a slimmed down version. It uses MicroPython on the Raspberry Pi. So check out EduBlocks, completely free to use it. And if Josh knows that more teachers are using it, he just feels even more happy. And he's always listening now for feedback if people want to tell him, Now, one of the nice things you can do, and you can do this with the microbit make code editor as well, you create your blocks, but you can also see how it would look in Python text. Although when you read the blocks, you can see, in fact, if I can get a close-up of one of the images. Here we have import time, while true, colon. So it's all Python syntax. And like I said, there's coding cards there that you can download. 123 coding cards. So you could download them, print them yourself, and okay. So that's one more. I need to move on to some of the topics now in a moment. Let me just recommend a few other things. So one of the nice things, if you are using tutorials, some of these are recommended have a high level of interactivity. So this, practicepython.org. No, sorry. Where is it? There's a particular one. No, looking at Oh my gosh, I think I forgot to put the link. I had it, and I've somehow not pasted it in. So some of them have, well, W3 schools I can use to model what I'm talking about. So some of them have interactivity. So the example that we typed in, you click run. My reaction from you, my feeling about using tools like this is they do have a purpose, but be very careful not to overuse them, because I just found like Code Academy, kids just became so bored. And a lot of time it just became for them like a hoop jumping exercise. Right, I've done number 4, I've done number 5. When I actually came to assess their level of understanding and knowledge about it, they were like, well, we didn't do that tutorial. And I could go and look at the stats and say, yes, you did. You did that one yesterday. You did that one this morning. And it was just like the learning hadn't become sticky enough. Whereas like the challenges that I talked about before, where they're using and putting into place things that they've been learning to solve these challenges. And then we had exercise books where they would sometimes have to respond and write things in their exercise books. Just found that was a way better way of doing it. But like I said, what would I know? I'm bald old git with an Irish accent who probably doesn't know the first thing about Python tutorials. There are some things that if you don't know that you should know about. So Python Challenge. Anybody ever heard of the Python Challenge.com? PythonChallenge.com. Hello, people in the chat. Okay. So I discovered this a few years ago, and it's, sometimes when you're looking for something like a plenary rather than a lesson starter, some people say, oh, we use Kahoot, we do this and the other. The Python Challenge is quite an interesting one because there are different numbers of challenges. It says there's 33 levels. I don't think I've ever managed to get past like level 5 or 6 or something. So challenge 0. What you have to do is you have to try to change the URL address. It says 2 to the power of 38. Now, if you can work out what 2 to the power of 38 is, oh, hang on, let me just slide this down so you can read that. It gives you a clue. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a 0 here in the URL. And if you can work out what 2 to the power of 38 is, now, there is a Python function where you can work out the exponential of a certain thing. Now, I've forgotten what it is, but if I went to, let's try this. So, Python exponential mathematical functions. Oh no, I clicked on Python 2. I should have gone to Python 3. So on the top, change to Python 3. Mathematical functions. So one of these, now I haven't practiced this before. I should have done, because then I wouldn't. Okay. So, oh, power. Math.exp, which is something to the something. So what I have to do is I have to put something in there and do it. So, right, I don't want to take up too much time and do this. I do know how to do it because I have got the challenge number 6, but that could be something you could try. But what is really nice about the Python challenge is, so let's just say, I should have got the answer earlier. Let's just say it's something like 56,473. I have made this number up, but what happens is, so clearly I've got it wrong, but it takes you to a page which is challenge 2 or challenge 1. And challenge 1 will then be, now you have, and you can write little Python programs that will help solve it. It doesn't give you the solutions. So that's the Python challenge. The new Boston is a guy, I think he's called Bucky, and he has made all of these YouTube tutorials. This one's probably about 4 or 5 years old. But there's something about his voice, like, hi guys, it's Bucky here. I'm going to teach you how to do this thing in Python. And, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know why. I kind of find it nice to listen to his voice. There are loads and loads of Python tutorials online and videos. So I don't know, if you've got the idea that you want your students to go away and learn all of it, then that one might help. I have listed also Code Academy on there. I have to say, I like Code Academy, but I'm not a big fan of, you're going to learn how to program Python by doing these Code Academy exercises. It just feels to me like it doesn't work. And all I'm going on is when I assess my students lesson after lesson after they've done it, it was like they'd completely forgotten it or they'd never been there in the first place. Oh, here's another one. Now, I earlier was talking about, if I go back to my document, I was talking about a challenge-based approach to teaching programming. So here are two links to resources. People say to me sometimes, oh, Alan, like we use your challenges from that hack jam, or we went to the other hack jam, I've got those challenges. Will you write some more challenges for me? Well, all you need to know is know how to use a search engine. And if you do, you can go to a search engine and you'll see, look, here are whole categories. Like if you want your students to learn all about data structures, click on arrays and look, here are some resources, but then there are challenges like, can you do this and can you do that? Now, if you are using these as a teacher, rather than give them a link or access to a solution, you could just copy and paste these challenges from somewhere to somewhere else, and then you could point them to some solutions afterwards. Of course, we're not going to tell them what the solution is, because there is not always the solution. That's using python.com, and there's also practice Python. So practice Python, look at how many challenges there are that you might decide to set for your classes. And do they use chilies to rate how hot or how hard the challenges are? So for example, write to a file only gets one chili. Let's have a look. So take the code from this website exercise here, and then what you need to do is you need to use it, but instead of printing the results to the screen, write them to a text file instead. So then you can have a bit of discussion. There might be some things you can remind the class. You might even give them a couple of clues. You might reveal something for a moment and then hide it and not tell them where you've got it from. And then if you then find that you need to, you can then talk them through a solution. My head and my heart tell me that that is a much more sustainable way of teaching children how to solve problems using text-based programming language than simply pointing them at a tutorial. What do you think? Do you think I'm right, or do you think I'm wrong? Are you brave enough to tell me I'm wrong? I'd love you to if you think I am. I can see Rob is typing something in the chat. What about you, Neil, Claire, Amanda? Do you think? Oh, now, Rob, one of the things is, because this is just a webinar, not like a full day training or a 2-hour session, I've probably made a few shortcuts. So absolutely, I do introduce concepts, but what I've tried to do is I only feel I've introduced the concept I think that they need for the next one or two. I know some teachers have like a big list. They say, right, this week we're teaching this, the next lesson we're doing this, and they work their way through that. But I try not to be a slave to, I mean, I know we have a specification if we're teaching the GCSE that we have to stick to, but just having that list and saying, well, I'll do this in this lesson, that in that lesson, I don't always think works. So absolutely. And like, if you look back at previous webinars, not just the Exalens ones, but the ones I've done previously, the jam-packed ones in the past, I've actually gone into a lot more. I've explained about I will sometimes demonstrate something, say, look, this thing here does this. In fact, let me do it. So there's one tool I use a lot called Sculpt. I tend to use this when I turn up at a school and they say, oh, by the way, we asked the technicians to install Python and they're not going to allow us to install it. So, oh, that's fine. We use your web browser. Now, what you won't be able to read very clearly is there's some code here, a script, that when I execute it, will draw a polygon. And what I do is I show it to people and I say, can you make a prediction? So I've done videos on this before, so I don't want to go into too much on this. So here's a piece of code. Can you figure out what it does? Now, later on, I would have a list of vocabulary things like function, argument, iteration, data structure, array, list, parentheses, square brackets. And we would try and see if we can use any of that vocabulary to discuss what we can see on the screen. But then what I will do is, all right, let's execute the code. So everybody's come up with a theory and a hypothesis about what might happen. And when we scroll down, here we have a 4-sided polygon. It's a square. Each of the sides is a different color. So then I could say, what if we wanted to draw a triangle and we wanted all the sides green? So what we could do is we could remove one of the objects from the array or the list, and we could change these words. Now, if you can't read it, don't worry, you can always just click on the link and say you can do it. So that would be one suggestion. Is he right? Is it going to do that? Let's have a look. So we click run, and then I can hear some people are itching saying, no, 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 there's something that got wrong. Oh, it's drawn a three-sided object, but it's not a polygon because they don't touch. So I could then set 10 telling me, right, draw an equilateral triangle, a scalene, isosceles, a pentagon, a hexagon, one with a dash side, one with a thicker side. So as they're going through, and then they start saying, how to change the pen width? Oh, do you want me to Google that for you, how to change it? So a lot of this stuff they learn as they go along, and then there's a point where they have to take the exercise books, and I'll ask them some questions, and then they have to respond, or use show me boards and hold up the answers. Okay. So that was in response to something that Rob talked about. Absolutely, I would introduce coding concepts, but not just the coding concepts, but the computational thinking as well around this, things like sequence selection, iteration, and the flow control. Code Academy, the students can lose interest. However, if you're not in the lesson because you need to set some work or something like that, you know, but you probably set this for a cover lesson. Self-guided, I would say self-guided works well for those who are highly self-motivated. But I'm guessing, Neil, that when you were doing that, you had a particular goal in mind, whereas a lot of the students I taught, especially in my GCSE class, I had a lot of lazy boys who would not do the graft. But what I found was, in my experience, so I can't say how it compares to yours, I found that the students really enjoyed the problem solving in pairs in the classroom in front of me, and it became heavily gamified because even though we weren't scoring points and that, there was a real sense of competition and achievement and success when we did a lot of sharing of it. In the Hello World magazine, this is issue 5. If you've got issue 4, there's an article all about pair programming and explain that in a bit more detail. Yep, so Rob, file handling. So what I would do, for example, is I have a document. Let me share this down. Oh, you can see it. So I have a document. I think it's exit file handling. Okay. And I could show them this document and say, right, file handling. Now, so I have a few choices when I have this. Now, notice my video is doing some weird things. Is the audio quality okay? Can you hear me all right? Most of the video is stuttering. Okay, it might just be at my end, the video. So, just by having these resources that I've planned and prepared beforehand, I felt it put me in a good position because I could either just tell them to read it, or I could read it to them, or change it or whatever. So I could say, right, if we were to type the following 3 lines in a shell, so let's not open the shell right now. So we've got an assignment operation here. So we have f equals open, test.text, comma, and we have a switch here, or an option that we're going for W. Now, bear in mind, they've never seen file handling before. And then we have f.write. So we're using a dot method. So we don't yet know what's going on here because we've not seen this kind of thing before. But you can all tell me what that is. Yeah, that's right, Andrew. It's a string. And we're using it as an argument within the brackets here. And we've got f.close. So we've got open, write, close. Now, what I do is have a whisper conversation with your partner. If we were to do that now, what might happen? Would we see anything? Would we hear anything? How would it look different? You know, sort of. Okay. So you've had a conversation. Let's hear from some of you. Well, you think it's going to write the word test on the screen. All right. And the W, you're not really sure what the W is. Okay, that's fine. That's it from you. You think it's going to write a file. Okay. And again, I'm not going to go, oh, yes, you think it's going to write a file? Because giving too much away at that point. So like, oh, you think it's going to write a file? Why did you say that? Do you agree? Oh, you agree? Why do you? Oh, right, okay. So there would be a point where I would say, well, shall I try it? In fact, why don't you try it on your computer and see, does it do what you predicted it would do? So go away in your pairs, you can either do it each of you at the same time, or one of you can do it while the other looks. So what happened? And so nothing happened. How do nothing happened? He said it was going to write a file. How do we know if it wrote a file or not? Did you look for the file? Oh, Windows search. Oh, we found the. Okay. So it was partly like a discovery for themselves, partly led by me, and it all depended a lot on, So it could be a lesson where they all just sat there, oh, looking at me, and I might think, you know what, they're not playing ball today. Let's tell them to work through the instructions and see. So those instructions, I'll put a link to that in the document. It's just there. It's exit.im/help with file handling. I'll also put that in there. I have to go to a different document to do that. Give me a second, otherwise I'll forget. Now I'm keeping an eye on the time. I haven't allowed a lot of time for the next two segments. So, right, so there's a link to that now in that document. Okay, the best use of Scratch. So I'm moving on to the next segment now. There is a little bit of repetition. Watch some of the previous webinars, you'll see certain themes crop up. And Python and Scratch come up a lot because I see, to me, these are like two of the most valuable tools I use, but they're not exclusively the only tools I use. I love Scratch. I love how, if it weren't for the NEA, we could almost practically teach all of computer science GCSE through Scratch. Well, at least the practical problem solving sort of elements, except there is a requirement to use a text-based programming language. I love Scratch. I have taught it with children at Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, and I have a particular approach that I read. If I've had a class that I've never had before, I always love to start with, which is it starts with them building a racing car game. Now, the thing about a racing car game, it starts off with a very, very simple drawing that they create themselves of a car. They're in the sort of bird's eye view, they're looking down on a car. And then what they have to be able to do is create some scripts that introduces interactivity to the car. So it's like a car, if you look at like my hand, so this has to go around the screen without hitting the sides, and then they create a track. And as it develops, to begin with, I'm spoon feeding a lot of the very beginning. Like you have to make your car like this. It has to have 4 tires, what color tires, whatever, that's up to you. But eventually there comes a point where I ask the students to then, now it surprises people sometimes when I tell them that I've had some classes where I've had them for an hour a week, and nearly every single lesson every week we've been working on their racing car game all year long. And it does, some people go like, what? You did one project in Scratch all year long. But what I realized was the power of a project. Students were so deeply engaged and it was like the best thing that they'd ever worked on. And I can show you later on, I can show you some of the solutions that I developed. Nobody ever actually finished a racing car game because we only ever used the racing car game as our shared sort of core model in the classroom. So they all my students actually developed their own game based on a racing car game to begin with, but we had multiplayer games, we had games with levels in, some that shared that you could play on two computers at the same time because it used the global element where you can share data across Scratch. If you allow somebody potentially 40 hours to work on a project, you've seen it with some of the NEA projects when some students spend 20 hours on it, what they can achieve. Imagine having double the amount of time. Now, there is an exaggeration there. It wasn't every single lesson in 40 because we had trips and assessments and quizzes and all those other things to do. But it was top set year 7. The last time I did this with one class all the way through the year. And every single lesson, can we carry on with our game? Can we carry on with our game? Now, in the document that I've shared, if you click on this, this video here, I recorded this, I don't know, 2011 or something. It's a video that I've made just shows how you start off with it. I've had loads of different developments and iterations of that since then. So there's one approach, the marble racer one. So I've written some lesson resources that you can download for free from Kaz there. And it describes a very similar approach we start with a game that exists already. Now, there are 10 people taking part in the live webinar. How about I come into your school at no cost to you or your school, and I teach the start of this lesson with a class, or if you could get them for a morning or an afternoon, like 2 hours, and you could try it like bottom set year seven, top set year nine, whatever. Invite me into your school at some point in the future, and there would be no cost. And then you can sit at the back of the room, kind of going, I'm not really sure, but at least I've not had to teach this class for this hour or these 2 hours or whatever. Um, because some people say to me that they never get to see anybody teach because they're the only computing teacher in the village. Other people come and watch them teach, but they never get to see others teach. I can guarantee it won't be an outstanding lesson, but it might help you in your journey towards, if you're still trying to head towards having an outstanding lesson. So if you want me to do that, you just need to book me for a day. You need to send me an email afterwards and say, like, Alan, I want you on the 4th of November or the 22nd of December. Well, let's pick a different date in December, but pick a date, and it would be ideal for me, so I can keep it for everybody, if we can invite 2 or 3 other teachers into your school just for that one lesson. It just is to help more people gain. Now, luckily, as an alternative to Scratch, personally, I haven't had a great deal of use because I nearly always go to Scratch and Python. EduBlocks, although I'm recommending it and saying it's really good, again, I've just started playing with EduBlocks. I would say you'll find EduBlocks and Blockly not exactly the same, but there is large similarities, except EduBlocks is very much written from a Python kind of point of view. So there's a good link that Rob has shared, and I need to copy that and stick that into the document. If I can, I'll do that in a little while. So the Scratch, oh yeah. So if you think that would be of any help, I'd be happy to come. I love teaching, and almost every week I'm somewhere in a school teaching a lesson, and let me know if that works for you. Now, I haven't allowed a lot of time for the last section, the resources for GCSE Computer Science. Who of the 10 of you in the chat is currently teaching GCSE Computer Science or are about to? If you are, maybe tell us which particular qualification. Are you doing Pearson at Excel, OCR, AQA? Which particular one is it? You might say, oh, well, plan is that from September 2019 or a little bit further down the road. Now, I think in popularity contests, I think it's always going to come close between OCR and AQA. I think for the last few years, certainly, just in terms of popularity, I think OCR has got it. About a year ago, because I do this Python camp in New York. It's next week, the 3-day Python course at the STEM Center. There's one teacher on there said he was going to do the WJEC course, Educast. All right, okay, that's a brave move. Do you know any other schools said, oh yeah, well, we're part of a cluster of 6 schools in North Yorkshire, and we're all going to be following the same course. Like, oh, good. Because one of the things that you'd want to know when you're choosing the GCSE is that there's somebody near you, like a physical person that you can like touch, shake their hand, cry on their shoulder when you need to, that isn't too far away from you. It's all very well, we have all the online stuff like the Facebook forums and all that, but it does always help to know that there's somebody, a real person, not far from you, teaching the GCSE. So if you, frequent the Facebook groups, so I said before OCR tends to be the most popular one. There's a very, very active OCR GCSE Computer Science group on Facebook, and it's starting to creep up. If you're a member of that group, you'll see loads of times people come up and they say, what's the best resources for GCSE? What's the best resources for GCSE? I'd say if you've got the money, get all of them, because being able to have that option in your room to swap between them, to give out physical textbooks, if that's what you need to do, then if you can afford all of them, especially if you're new to teaching a particular course. So if somebody's just mentioned that they're swapping from one board to the other, so I would be using that. I'm kind of trying to avoid the sun here. I would be using the fact that you're swapping to try and go forward to SLT and say, look, I'm going to need a bit more budget because there's some big changes and whatever between the courses that you want to make sure you've got the resource you can. I've not really put this list here in any particular sort of order, or have I? I think when this question comes up a lot, I think pretty much hands down, Craig and Dave always comes up number one in terms of popularity. So you probably know that Craig and Dave are both teachers. They both have computer science backgrounds. I think both of them have worked in fields of computing before they became a teacher, and that shows in the quality of their resources. There is a subscription amount, and I think I haven't subscribed for their resources, but I know lots of other people have. What people have said, if you're teaching the A level, it's really good value because you get everything for the GCSE and for the A level all together in the one place. And there's a lot of stuff that you can try for free without having to subscribe. And I've taken advantage of that, which I'll come on to in a little bit because they have a lot of videos on YouTube. Now, the Axeed ones, again, I've heard loads and loads of great praise for these. One of the nice comforts about some of the Axeed resources, some of them, like there's a book with the theory, which is a lot of worksheets that you might print out for your students, and then you can deal with the printing costs. So it's like you might print them all at once or put them in a booklet. But there's a one-off cost. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but for that one, it's around about £100, which is a lot of schools have said it's about 10% of the budget that they might have for the year or the GCSE. And you've got a resource there that, especially if you know you're going to be on jury service or paternity leave, like if you're going to be off for a week or two, certainly there's loads of things there that are, and you don't have to have the computers working that you can put, in front of the students. The sun's encroaching further this way. So now the PG Online, in the main, what I've heard people say, like, it's quite expensive. However, the quality is fantastic. Now, PG Online are publishers. Craig and Dave and Axeed, their resources originally created by teachers that have then been sold. Whereas PG Online, if you look back into their history, they're a textbook publisher. So the quality is very, very high, but people say that like the textbooks might be amongst the most expensive, but some people do all their food shopping every week at Marks and Spencer's because they don't mind paying the extra for the quality. There are a load of lesson planning materials for PG Online, and the costs do start to mount up if you start buying all of the packs. There is some that are available for free, and I mean legitimately, if you go on their site, you can download some samples. I have no issues with the quality. Personally, maybe I'm a bit old school. I used to just sort of prepare my own resources and because I'd always liked the flexibility of being able to do that. But you know what? If I had £4,000 or £5,000 sloshing around in my account, I think I'd be trying to buy all of these if I had the option. Now, Sam Wicks, again, another teacher who thought, hang on, some of the resources here I've created, I keep sharing these with the teachers. So again, these are really, really popular. I've got a very, very strong following. And I've seen loads and loads of people, teachers in different situations saying, oh, the computer science resources are great, I use them. And I'm absolutely 100% certain that Sam Wicks has not given them any commission. They're just doing this because they genuinely think that the resources are great. It does include a lot of PowerPoints for teaching certain things. It doesn't quite fit into my particular style, but hey, this webinar is not for me, this is for you. So if you like having lots of webinars with lots of PowerPoints with slides, with all the resources on, then check out Sam Wicks's resources and you'll see he's got a lot of them. Now, I did think that maybe I should mention this one, the EXA Foundation MOOC. Those people who use it have been very, very kind. I don't think it's anywhere near as popular as some of the other ones that I've mentioned. It's not completely free. It works on this basis that maybe you don't have to stand at the front of the room to teach all of the class using all of the PowerPoints. It works on a different sort of teaching model, which The teachers who like it say it's the best way to teach, but of course they are going to say that. Where you only end up teaching what you need to teach to students who need it when. And I haven't got a lot of time. I should have allowed more time for me to talk about my own particular approach, but I don't know, there you go. So if I just close under the tab, I just want to show you something very briefly, but you've probably heard this before. I've shared countless videos online and you know, I try not to flog this particular thing to death too much. So you can actually register for the ExaMOOC for free. It's not time limited. It's a bit like a book that's got 40 chapters and the first 14 are free. So my social business model is you'll read the first 10, 11 chapters and you'll think this is fantastic, and then you'll want to buy the rest. And the rest, there's £100 subscription per year. And the subscription is only if you want to carry on using it. So if you only ever use the 14, you never have to pay. And the way you would use it, I'll try and do this in a minute if I can. There's a teacher section. Let's go. What you do is, to begin with, you do a pre-assessment with your classes. So systems architecture, right, let's find out what you already know of systems architecture. Probably not a great deal at the very beginning of the year 10. It's a new course, but they use that as their benchmark and they get a quiz score result. And these, I would say that these are very high quality questions. It's taken me nearly a year to build all of these. It tells them which ones they get wrong, not so they can learn the answers, but just in case of particular ones. And then what you say, right, we're going to do systems architecture now for the next 5 weeks. So here's topic 1. So if they're on OCR, they go to topic 1, OCR resources, which I've already got open here. And if you've bought one of these paper-based textbooks, it tells them which page they need to read. It tells them, first week, this is what you need to learn. You need to learn the purpose of the CPU and the function of the CPU. And it points to the pages. And rather than say just go to that section of the book, it actually tells them which page and which section. Maybe you couldn't afford to buy books, or the students haven't got the books at home because you don't trust them to look after them. There's lots of links to online resources and also, oh look, here's some Craig and Dave videos. You know how I said that they share a lot of their content for free. But this video here, I think it's 4.5 minutes long. And no offense to Craig and Dave, but you don't have to watch all 4 minutes the first time for the first topic. So you only need to watch 30 seconds here and 7 seconds there. So like potentially after 20 seconds, you've seen the bit that you need. You can think, oh, that was a bit fast, I'll go back and watch it again. And there are lots of other video content as well. So the students, obviously, they don't have to read all of the books and all the websites. They just need to pick, a bit like Netflix. They pick the particular thing that appeals to them the most. They watch the thing, they summarize it. And then the following week, or sorry, a few weeks later, because they've done topic 2, and topic 3, and topic 4, and topic 5, you do the quiz again, and you use that as a diagnostic tool. And then if you want, later on, they can do the quiz a 3rd time. The 3rd quiz, they can do that as multiple times. And I think I'm running out of time. It's not all just multiple choice quizzes. There's exam questions in there. So if you're looking for some help in terms of writing exam papers, there's loads of them in there. There's lots of self-marking quizzes. I mean, you're going to expect me to say that the teachers who use it say it's great. But, you know, if you know somebody's using it, they'll tell you. And if the first 14 weeks are free anyway. Yeah. And then finally, a teacher today said, have you seen this YouTube channel? And I think the teacher's called Aaron. And I said I would include it in the thing. So I'm hoping somebody is now going to put a message in the chat saying, oh, I didn't know this was there. And look, we've got. So Aaron has made some video, but he's collected lots of videos together as well. And they're all categorized, so you can have a look through in there. So he's made his YouTube channel there. Now, it's just after 7. It's 1 minute after 7. I need to talk to you. Don't disappear straight away because there's a couple of things I want to mention. So, I have a question. The next Exalens webinar. So I'm not enough, you know, humble. Sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't believe that these webinars are perfect. I feel I need to practice them lots and lots, and that they will get better and better. So I need to figure out where the sun is going to be in the future, so that the sun's not right in my face like it is now as I'm recording a webinar. Looks like I'm in a prison cell. Let me out. Do you think I should do some of these in August? If I told you there was some in August, would you be like, it's summer holidays, I don't want to know? I mean, even if 2 or 3 people came along, if it was a Saturday morning, Sunday evening, Tuesday morning, let me know if you think it would be a good idea, and I'll put some more on in the summer. Because like you, I don't unlike you, I don't have a teaching timetable anymore, so I could be doing these every day of the week if it was. But if you've got particular topics you think that would help, then let me know. The way to let me know is there's a feedback form, and could you please fill in a feedback form, whether you're watching the live webinar now or the catch up. It's you I'm talking to as well. Yes, you. Could you please do the feedback form? It takes no more than 2 minutes. You just click on it. It asks you, what's your name? You don't have to type your full name if you'd rather be Mr. Mischievous or anonymous. Which webinar? Well, today is the 9th of July. And there's a couple of tick boxes, and then there's a bit you can type in some comments at the end. Look, I've got one box with text, and it's not even a required answer. So please, please, please give me some feedback now, and I will read it later on. And then finally, I'm going to press the stop button now on the recording, and in a few minutes, I will add a link to the recording here. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye. If you thought it was useful, tell your friends, maybe tell them there might be an excellent webinar in August if we can persuade Alan that it's a good idea. Thank you very much. When is the issue? Okay, so I'm going to press stop now on the recording.